Data
I
handling.
mean,
Yes. Student, would you like to add? All right. What is data handling? Data handling is a process. It is a process whereby you gather, you will record, and you will also present information. You will present the information in such a way that it will be helpful to other people, others. For example, you will use graphs, you will use charts. In our classes, in the pre-grade or say in the foundation phase classes, we use data handling in the form of pictograms. Do any of you that's at schools work with pictograms in the foundation phase?
I saw a couple of
Yes, student, would you like to add?
students that can't see the screen.
I can't hear you.
There are a couple of students that can't see your slide at the moment. They can't see your screen.
Is that all right? Again, I'm going to try and upload it again. Just be patient, students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please tell me, can you see my slide now? Can everyone see my slide at the moment? Amber Akila, can you see the slide on your side?
I'm just checking with Danielle because she's the one
All
that
right.
sees.
Please let me know when they can see it, if everyone can see it.
Oh, Danielle just got back to me and she said that it doesn't want to go into the meeting at all, not the slide.
All right. Anyone else have the same problem? All right. So tell me, is Danielle in the meeting?
She said it doesn't want to go into the get into the meeting.
She can't. All right. Can you perhaps share the link with her quick, please?
No.
All right. Thank you. All right, students. So data handling is a process whereby you will gather data or information, you'll record it, and you'll present it in a way that others will understand it. Like I've said, you'll use it in the form of graph or a chart. It can also be a pictogram, like I've told you. It can be line graphs. Data handling also allows children to learn. Data handling helps the children to learn the ability of interpreting and displaying data in different forms. Now, for those of you that's at school, tell me, how do you go about teaching data handling to your learners in your classroom? Amber, do you do it at your school? Jamie? Is it Loretta? Do you do it at your schools? Or you're currently placed at schools? How do you teach data handling at school? How will you teach it? All right. Remember, in order for us to make sense of let's say data handling information, it must be useful. Children need to be able to classify, number one. They must be able to sort, organize. They must also be able to represent it. And most importantly, they must be able to interpret the data. Remember, just for an example, our brains are constantly collecting information. All right. Now, we make use of in our daily lives. We know which objects, for example, to handle carefully. For example, if something came out of the oven, you won't take it with your bare hands. And we will also know which activities it will require for hanging on. For example, if we play on a merry-go-round or on sliding poles, we know that we have to hang on it. All right? So what is the concept? There are three concepts that children need to be able to understand. One is to identify variation. Secondly, to classify information. And thirdly, to sort information. Now, classifying information, I'm going to just to give you a few examples. The example of colors. They must be able to identify objects by colors. They must be able to identify different types of foods and also be able to distinguish between bicycles, truck, cars that we will normally use in pictograms. All right. They must also know the different shapes, for example, circle, triangles, squares. That is when they classify the information. Now, the identity variation. Examples there is they must include objects that differ by size, weight, color, and that might differ differ according to who takes part and what must be accomplished and the roles thereof. All right, that is identify variation. Now let's move to sort information. Here, learners must be able to sort. They must sort objects. They must be able to put it in piles, for example. They must differentiate between weather patterns. Let's say, for example, rainy days from sunny days, or when we do that, when we want them to differentiate between sunny and rainy days, we must use icons in the weather activity we give to the learners. We can also use objects such as animals, and we can divide it maybe in, let's say, domestic and wild animals, and they must sort it. Any questions on this slide, students? Do you understand, Akila? Atisha? Are you clear this slide? Anyone would like to add to this slide? Jamie, would you like to add? All right. Now let's move on to the data handling cycle. First of all, you as the teacher needs to specify the problem and plan the activity that you want the learners to do. Secondly, you must collect data from a variety of sources. You must then process the data and present it. The learner must be able, lastly, to interpret and discuss the data. So tell me, what objects in your classroom will you use for data handling? Remember, you can do it with any objects, but what will you use in your classroom? Evelyn, what do you use in your classroom for data handling activities, and how do you do it? Danae, what do you do for data handling? What activities do you do for data handling in your classroom? And what objects do you use?
Sorry, I don't know.
Is it all right? Thank you. Anyone else? Remember, yes. Anyone would like to add?
Hi.
Yes.
Hi. I think that like in the classroom they are beads, right? So with the beads, like I have different kinds, different types of beads and also different kinds of beads. So in order for them to capture how many they have, like I think that the teacher should like have a grid, right? Where she puts like one of each different kind of bead to help them sort the different kind of beads or the different kinds of beads that they are.
Yes.
Okay.
Good. Good. That is quite correct. Yes. You will use different objects, like the student just said, different kind of beads, different shapes. Teacher will make a grid, or they can put it in lines or rows, and then they put the different ones in a different line, and that is how they can use the doc what you have in class to do data handling. So now let's continue with the data handling cycle. The first stage with the yes, all right. Thank you. Anyone would like to add? All right. Remember, with the first stage, you must have a question in mind as to what you want to do. You must make decisions of how the data will be collected. You, as the teacher, will decide on the topic, and you will decide where you will collect it or from whom it will be collected and how you're going to collect the data. So this all starts with the question in mind, all right? Remember, you as a teacher must now formulate a meaningful question. And this question will guide you, will guide the data collection process. In other words, the data that you will collect will provide an answer to your question. All right. So you will decide on a topic. The teacher must decide on the topic. All right. The learners, you will then ask the learners to collect the data. But remember, your question must first be made clear in your mind. You must know where you want to go with this data handling process. The students or the learners will then collect the data. And this, where they collect the data, is normally the first step that the learners partake in. Then you must decide where you will collect the data from. All right? What we do in schools is that we normally ask them to collect data, say within the classroom, or you can go outside and ask learners to pick up different shapes of leaves or different color, let's say color flowers perhaps. All right. So if you have different colors for data handling, then obviously you will have a grid and you will put the different color flowers in the different grid lines, on the different grid lines. And that is how you will work out your data. Then lastly, or the third step here for the learners is, how are they going to collect the data? All right. Remember, data handling is normally a practical activity. And please keep in mind, the teacher is not supposed to do it alone. The learners must actively be involved in this activity. For example, in grade R or in preschool, you can also do it. You can ask learners, you might have Legos in your classroom, to sort out the different color Legos. Or you can ask them to sort out the different toys. For example, cars, dolls. That is how they will sort it out. Will sort it. Now let's move to the next stage. Here the learners must organize the data. All right. Here they must sort again. You can use pictograms here. The learners put the data according to the attributes. Tell me, you're all clear on the previous slide, students, before I continue? Okay. Yes. Anyone have a question for me? All right. At this stage, the data has already been collected. All right. And now the actual process begins. This means that the data must be sorted now. All right. Remember, you can use graphs, you can use tally tables, and in grade R and even in the foundation phase, we make use of pictograms, all right? The pictogram is used to organize the data, all right? Remember, grade R learners must be able to sort in this process, all right? And we can sort it in a variety of ways. If you look at my picture, the first one says color. Their learners had to sort it according to colors. Second line, they had to sort it by shape. And the third line, they had to sort it in size. So there is different ways you can ask learners to sort, all right? For example, sort by color, shape, and size. Are you all clear on this slide, students? Or do you have a question for me on this slide? Colin, are you clear on this slide? Evelyn, are you clear? You're all good. All right. Now they have to present the data. Like I've mentioned already, you can draw tally tables. Learners must put the objects in lines or rows. You can ask them to do that. Or they can put the objects according to color, shape, and size. All right. This year forms all part of the knowledge of how to present it and how they understand data handling. Lastly, they will need to interpret the data. All right. When they interpret the data, they must read it to you. They must understand it, understand why they did it. All right. And remember, this is the final step in the data handling process. So here, learners must present the data. They must be able to tell you, for example, how many bees there are, or how many butterflies, or the colors of the butterflies. You can ask them that. You as a teacher must let them answer the questions. You will only assist them when necessary. All right? And while they're presenting the data to you, you must frequently ask questions like why? What is the beads the most? What is the most in your pictogram? All right? That is what you must ask them. Constantly ask questions. Anyone have questions on data handling? Are you all good with it? Evelyn, you fine? Tanisha, are you fine with this?
Yes, thank you.
All right. May I proceed, students? All right, let me move on. So this is just the activities you can do for data handling, all right? There you can see I use Legos, all right? Put a number 1 to 5 there, and they had to pack it out, okay? That is a type of graph, all right? At the bottom, you will see this is a birthday graph again. Whose birthday is in January? They must count the learners, and they must color it in. The pictogram again, as you can see, apples, the certain percentage of learners or number of learners love apples, and that's why they draw the faces on there or color in the faces. All right, this is all activities you can do in your classroom. Do any of you do these activities with your learners in class? And how do they find it? Danae, do you do it in your classrooms with your learners?
We do,
All right.
yes.
And what's your experience?
It's normally fun because it's very interactive and like they can work with their friends, especially in a group. So we did data handling last week where we melted ice on different colors, and then the data was basically which paper, like the yellow paper, for example, the ice melted first, and then the white paper, and then this paper, and then that paper, and then we put it all together at the end, but no one's result was really the same. It just turns out that it's random.
Yes, yes, because they're still in the learning phase. What grade are they?
That's grade 2.
Grade twos. All right. You said you use paper.
Yes, we did.
Okay, so did you try it again afterwards or?
No, we only did it once, but yeah, it was like a
Okay.
fun activity just to really,
Yes.
yeah, it's like you can't really get the data from there, but it was just to give them the experience and how it is collected. But it's obviously done over a long period. But we did tell them that, and that the experiment needs to be done in a controlled environment. We did it outside, and it was very windy. Some ice blocks
Yes.
blew
Yeah.
away. So yeah.
All right. All right. So yeah, maybe you can just incorporate that with the pictogram next time.
That's right.
All right. Thank you. Let's continue. So let's just move on quickly to time. All right. Remember, time is also an important skill. Remember, time we can't see. All right. Why I say that is because you can ask learners what time of the day do you have breakfast? And you will say in the morning. That's a form of teaching them time. What time of the day do you have lunch? They will say in the afternoon, and supper at night. That's a form of teaching them time concept. All right. Then we can also use non-standard and standard measurements. But for the foundation phase, we mostly make use of standard units. All right. Just for interest, the stages when kids learn time is from from the age 0 to 2. This is where the infant start or will give you an indication when it's feeding time, when it's sleeping time, or you give them play routines. All right. You will gradually introduce it to them, the routines to them when they, all right. You will also give them plenty of time to move from one activity to the next. This is now for the students working with learners, students from 0 to 2 years old. Now, when they reach 3 to 4 years old, okay, time is still very much abstract to them or abstract concept to them. All right. Now, preschoolers still needs lots of personal experiences with time. Therefore, like I've mentioned before, you will ask them when is snack time, when is story time. They will be able to tell you we do that in the afternoon, in the morning. That is how you teach them the concept of time. All right. This is in order for them to develop and understand time at the age of 5 to 6 years old. Here they will define time by recognizing, for example, events and symbols. They will learn time or learn about time by observing and recording it. For example, they're charting, for example, charting the weather. Like I've said previously, they will start to recognize times through events. They will know, for example, when it's their birthdays, what day it is, and which month it is. That is how we teach them the concept of time. All right, you all clear, students, on this slide? May I move on? All right, you all clear on this slide?
Yes, thank you.
All
Yes,
right.
Portia.
All right. All right. So let's just look at the differences between, or the difference between standardized and non-standardized time. All right. When we look at standardized times, all right, we normally teach them the days of the week, the hour of the day, and the months. And how do we teach them that? We give them an activity, or we do it during morning ring, and then we clap, or you will ask them, clap when I say certain time of the day, say lunchtime, then they clap. That is how you teach them standardized time. Anyone would like to add to that? How do you do it in your classroom, students? For those of you that's placed at schools, how do you do it in your classroom? All right, let's move on to non-standardized times. This is like I've explained to you in stages 0 to 2, or let's say pre-grade R, or sometimes they do it in grade R also. You measure it according to routines, the sleeping time, all right? And I've explained to you about the events. They will be able to identify or say which month it's their birthday, when is the birthday, and what day is the birthday. All right. Now, let's just look at activities for time. This is what you can do in your classroom, students. All right. So, for example, when it's autumn, you will ask them to pick the leaves from the ground, and or you will ask them how many leaves fell down, say in a classroom perhaps, and they must paste the different color leaves on the chart also. You can ask them when is it daytime, when is it nighttime. They will be able to tell you. At the bottom, you'll see a clock that we will normally use, let's say, from grade 1 to 3. All right. Where you have the analog clock, and you will put, for example, a 5 next to the 1, because you know there's 5 5 minutes. It indicates 5 minutes or 10 minutes. That is how you teach them time. We also teach them time, the days of the week. You can ask them to stand next to each other and say the days of the week, or do it in your morning ring. That is all time activities you can do in your classroom. Now, this is just a few tips I want to give you. When you do time and data handling in your classes, provide them to experience with real life experiences where possible. Remember, they still need lots of practice. So you will do time in your morning ring. You say the days of the week, days of the month. You must provide lots of manipulatives. You must encourage them to talk about it, to talk about their findings, to talk about the data, to talk about the time. Allow them to explain their own thinking, but you will correct them if it's not the right way to do it. And then, most importantly, you will ask them questions while you teach. Tell me, you all clear on time and data handling now, students, before I move on to assessments? Is there any questions for me? Manipulatives is normally when you make use of blocks, Legos, anything that I can feel and touch. That is the manipulatives you will use in your classroom, students. Right. Any other questions for me? Right. So students, can we just break 5 minutes till 20 past 6? Then we'll start after the break with assessments. Right, let's just take a coffee break and be back 20 past 5. Thank you. 20 past 6.